everything that we do now, every single project is about not planning necessarily, it's about storytelling. And storytelling comes in two flavors. One is data collection and how we represent the data. So when I started doing planning work, it was really hard to get data on cities. And now there's open data sources. Cities are sharing data all the time. The trick is, what do you do with it? How do you present it? How do you edit it in a way that it tells a compelling story about a place? So these are a couple examples where, this is where I say we become graphic designers. These are infographics. The one on the right was a study we did on transit-oriented development in Philadelphia, which was about crime and safety and the perceptions of crime around transit. We turned it into a series of cartoons to express exactly what people were telling us through that process, which helped to get people involved because they understood that we were listening to them and telling the story that they were telling us. So it's about using the data creatively, and then it's about doing the public process creatively, which is what I've been talking about with Wicker Park. In one case, we went out and literally did a storytelling booth. This is the Yorktown neighborhood in Philadelphia. It's one of the first African-American home ownership neighborhoods developed in the 60s, so it has a lot of history behind it. On Yorktown Day, we needed a way to engage folks in the neighborhood because we weren't having a lot of luck with what we had been trying so far. So we designed and built this storytelling booth. We pulled it out to the street. We got about 50 or 60 stories. People could come in. We used an iPod essentially to record the stories and replay them. So it's just a very simple way of getting people to tell us the stories that they had about the community. We integrated those stories into the plan, which made the plan that much richer. And it really helped, I think, people understand why the plan was necessary and where the ideas came from. So there's storytelling. There's also branding. So many times we get hired to do something that's called the Comprehensive Plan Update and Code. Nothing is more boring than that statement. So the first thing we're asked to do, the first thing we're not asked to do, we offer to do. Can we call this something else? Anything else. Something that will get people to understand that this is more interactive, more dynamic. So the branding is important. So what we name the plan, also how we draw. This is a flyer that was done for Hamtramck. They wouldn't let us change the master plan part of this, but we tried to make up for it in our graphics. This was some work that we did for Spring Garden. We're drawing in a way where there's a consistent graphic language from start to finish. All of our maps, all of the reports, all of the public events and flyers. We design t-shirts and postcards. All of that stuff has a very similar graphic look, so that when the plan is done, people know exactly what it's about. And in the case of Wicker Park, the branding for the plan was merged with the branding for the SSA, and I still see it out in the street, which is really great to see. And then there's ongoing engagement. So when I talked about doing the open house here on Milwaukee, it's not just an opportunity to get people to tell us what they think about the place that they're living in. It's actually an opportunity to implement something while we're planning. And that's one of the biggest complaints I hear about my profession, is that we plan and we plan and we plan, and it takes a long time to do something. If we can do something while we're planning, even better. So this is a different version of an open house that we did in West Philadelphia. We renamed this the Make Your Mark Plan, a little thumbprint, much better than what they were calling it before. It's a very long title, I don't remember it anymore. This is a historic church. It's called Hawthorne Hall. We basically used this building. We did this entire canvas wrap on the top. Very prominent commercial corridor. We got hundreds of people in the door to tell us what they thought about this plan, but we also helped expose this building to the local CDC in the city, and it's now a part of an ongoing art exhibit in Philadelphia called Hidden City, Philadelphia. So what was once a dead, derelict building is now being repurposed time and time again until there's an ultimate reuse for it. And it's helped breathe some life into all of the stores around it. We're doing the same thing now in Binghamton, New York, or as we call it, the Hamptons, the Binghamtons. They had this bank that was sitting there in downtown Binghamton. It's a 2,900 square foot bank, sitting there as this big dead eyesore for years in this city. We got access to the bank through the city. We've repurposed it as this open house. We had 500 people come in on opening night. If we had done a traditional public meeting, we would have gotten 50 if we were lucky. Part of how we did this is we tied it to a First Friday event. We integrated art into the space, so it was just part of the walking tour for First Friday. And people that came stayed. And we've opened it since 4 or 5 times. One for a youth event where we had 250 kids come in and play with all of the games that we put in this space. So what was, again, a dead, vacant building in downtown Binghamton now has some life, at least for while we're working there. And then when the plan is done, hopefully the owner will be able to lease that space. But we've also done things like video projections. This is a video projection we did in that Francisville neighborhood in Philadelphia, where we heard that very frustration. We don't want to wait for years to see something happen. So we took a few $1,000s, we worked with a video artist, we implemented this video installation. It's on the side of a vacant 3-story building. It came on every single night for 6 months. So it was a little bit of information about the plan, a little bit of information about the neighborhood, and a little bit of art. And it had an amazing impact. It actually chased the prostitutes off this corner, which was a side benefit. We weren't really planning for that, but we'll take it. But we did realize that bringing this kind of activity to a neighborhood really does help change the dynamic of who gets involved and the kind of momentum that we're trying to create in these places. But we've also worked with some of our clients to do things immediately after the plan was done. In Macon, they have these really steep hills. So we suggested they do the soapbox derby down one of the steep hills. They started the first year with a couple hundred people show up and they had like 5 cars. Last year they had 1,000 people show up, like 15 or 20 different soapboxes that they zoomed down this hill. Only 1 broken leg. But it was a really, really successful event, and it's the kind of thing that keeps momentum going. People understand that things are happening, whether it's something that's developed or it's an event like this, it all makes a difference. And they also, in Macon, this was something that happened after we were done, they designed this game in Macon called Macon Money, because everything in Macon has to start with Macon. They actually used to have a AAA baseball team called Macon Whoopee. I'm not kidding. Yeah, it's kind of awesome. It didn't last. So Macon Money, what they did was they actually designed money that could be redeemed at local stores in Macon, but they gave basically half the money to, well, they distributed the money across different people in the community. They had to find the right community match, the person that matched the numbers on their money. So it was a way to introduce them to their neighbors that they may not have known. And then once they made that match, they could redeem the money in local stores. So it was also about promoting local business. It was a great program. So basically, in conclusion, and in terms of what we do as an office, as designers, we have this moment where, as our cities are evolving, we've got this huge range of tools, which is kind of amazing. Both high-tech, low-tech. We have all of these high-tech tools. It's incredible what folks are doing on the internet with different software programs. We have this growing interest in cities. I've never seen more blogs and people involved and stating all sorts of opinions about what should happen in their neighborhood. While I may not agree with a lot of those opinions, at least they're involved. That's a good thing. And we also have this increasing access to information. So we've got communities that are willing and ready to talk about this stuff if we can make it fun and interactive. And that's really our charge. We have to find the tools when we're doing public outreach, because public outreach is messy, it's difficult and time consuming. We have to find the tools to innovate. We have to be artful and playful and interactive in a way that really encourages people to get involved. We have to actually select the tools that are the best fit for each place. So I showed you a number of different things that we've done in different places. They don't work everywhere. We've tried some of them in some places and they failed miserably. And so we've had to take a half step back and say, okay, well, what are we going to do differently? How are we going to design it for this specific community? The public outreach for us is central to the process. I think this is a point that's lost on a lot of planners that we work with and even some designers, where public outreach is sort of the medicine they have to take. They know that if they're going to do a plan or put together a design, they have to do some public outreach, but it really does feel like you're twisting their arm to do it. That's not the case with everyone, but there's generally a sentiment, and it's happening at Penn as well, with some of my students who ask me this question: what does the public know? Why should we engage them in the first place? We are trained as designers, we should know better. And I have to challenge them on this assumption that we know better. We know differently. I wouldn't say we know better. And I think it's the difference that helps us add value to projects if we can get enough people involved and really begin to create something that's what we call is sort of editing. It's an editing process. When people get involved, it's their ideas, it's our ideas, It's all sort of folded into one plan of action. And if it's done well, you can see a lot of implementation quickly. So I think that's where I'm going to leave off. Did I do 40 minutes?